Welcome, everybody, to the NHL Weekly Show on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. I'm your host for the NHL Weekly Show, Mike Goodpaster. Right now, I'd like to welcome in my co-host, Sam McGinnis. How you doing, Sam?
I'm doing really good.
Yeah, we got a few things to talk about this week, and we're going to start off with an injury report. But of course, Jay Bouwmeester had a cardiac episode, collapsed on the bench out in California. The game is to be rescheduled with the Ducks. Number one, do you have a status update on him? And number two, how does this affect the Blues going forward?
Yeah, I've been told he's doing very well, so that's good to know. I believe they had to actually revive him, so it got pretty serious, but he's doing much better now. I doubt the league will allow him to play again, which leaves the question, the longtime Blues defenseman is now not going to be playing with the Blues anymore, so who's going to take his place? That is somewhat of a blow to a player that's been on the team so long, but with the Blues being able to overcome adversity as they have in the past, I don't actually think this will make too much of an impact.
Well, I think it makes an impact just from what they saw on the ice that night and how long it takes them to recover from that, too, though.
Well, sure, and emotionally, it does take a toll, but again, adversity has been something they've had to deal with, and they proved through last year that won't stop them. I don't think anything will, but they certainly will be still concerned for their friend. They actually stayed in Anaheim for a day or two, I believe, even though they were supposed to leave to support him. So.
Yeah, all right. Let's go ahead. Let's look at some injuries that took place this week, and there are a lot of them. We're going to start off in Columbus with star defenseman Seth Jones, who sustained an ankle injury, will miss 8 to 10 weeks with a fractured ankle. How does this affect the Blue Jackets, who are making a run right now at the playoffs?
I mean, it is huge because he's easily their best defenseman in defense anyway. Maybe not their best offensive defenseman, but definitely their best pure defenseman. But the Jackets' defense has such depth that although that will be like losing a star player, they still have plenty of people to at least competently replace him. So it won't be to the same level of Seth Jones, but you'll still get solid defense.
All right, Shea Weber's another who's out 4 to 6 weeks for the Canadians.
Yeah, that's really the death blow. The Canadians were already on their way down, but that's like the nail in the coffin. That's hard for them to come back. Losing your captain is difficult, but when he's also your best defenseman, those two together and you're struggling to be able to make a playoff spot at all, that kind of does it for the Canadians.
Yeah, and Mark Giordano?
Another big one that hurts, last year's Norris winner and the Flames, they're just very close to a playoff spot, but they're back and forth with Winnipeg now for that wild card spot. Again, losing your captain and best defenseman, yeah, it's just that's going to be very hard for them to overcome.
All right, Connor McDavid out 2 to 3 weeks. At some point, I'm starting to think maybe we ought to just say who's healthy.
Yeah, there were actually some injuries I left off because they were less prominent or didn't take as much time and would be healthy soon. But the Connor McDavid thing is huge. Now, the Oilers' initial response to it was fantastic, but losing one of your top two players offensively, and they've been doing the majority of the work, although there has been some depth scoring that has come in recently, and congrats to the Oilers on that. That's what they needed to do. But that's their best forward right there, and arguably the best forward in the NHL that they just lost for 2 to 3 weeks, and they're in the midst of a playoff hunt.
Yeah, and on top of that, James Neal placed on IR for the Oilers.
Yeah, top three forwards, only one of them is healthy, and that's Leon Draisaitl. Losing James Neal isn't anywhere near as significant as Connor McDavid, but losing both Connor McDavid and James Neal together has got to hurt for the Oilers.
All right, Johnson out for 8 weeks for the Leafs.
Yeah, another forward gone. You never want to see this many people getting injured late in the season because you can't really tell what a team is, especially with, if I'm doing my math correctly, he should be good to go right around playoff time. So you're going to get a different dynamic heading into the playoffs versus what you've been working with for the rest of the regular season, assuming they do make the playoffs.
Yeah. And do you think they'll make the playoffs? How big of an effect does this have on them?
I don't think it'll be big enough for them to miss the playoffs. Frederick Anderson just got back, and they've gotten an upgrade at backup goaltender. I think because of that, they'll actually be able to make it.
All right, we had another coach fired. Minnesota Wild coach Bruce Boudreau was fired as the coach of the Minnesota Wild on Friday and replaced by assistant Dean Evison. The Wilds currently are 27, 23, and 7. They are 3 points behind the Arizona Coyotes for the second wild card spot in the Stanley Cup playoffs in the Western Conference. They're 7-3 and 1 in the last 11 games, following a shootout loss on Thursday night to the Rangers. Bill Guerin said the general manager for the Wild said it wasn't a direct reaction to the loss, but the result did play into it. And I mean, they're 7-3 and 1 over the last 11 games. They're in the midst of a fight for that wild card spot. Sam, does this make sense to you?
I think what they're trying to say is that this year they're not looking to succeed, because even if they did make the playoffs, they'd likely get rolled by a team much bigger than them. This is the time that they're trying to build a better team for the future. And this is a long time coming for Bruce anyway. He hasn't done what they have wanted to be. They have wanted to be a Stanley Cup contender since 2012, and it just hasn't worked out for him. So I think they're trying to go back into more of a rebuild and build up around a few of the stars they already have. I mean, they wouldn't have traded away some of their good players already had it not been for them telling everybody, you know, that's kind of the sign that your team is not trying to make the playoffs this year and then just firing the coach when they're doing well. That really shows what they're trying to do right now.
All right, and it was their second major move of the week that Guerin made. He traded forward Jason Zucker to the Pittsburgh Penguins for forward Alex Galchenyuk, I don't know, and defenseman prospect Kalen Addison, and a conditional first-round pick in 2020. So I would say that plays into what you're talking about. And what does this do for the Penguins picking up Zucker?
Yeah, I just recently, when I was writing the new version of the power rankings that I did, I mentioned that one of their needs was a winger. And so, of course, the next day, what do? They go get a winger.
So what you're telling me is you believe that the Minnesota Wild and the Pittsburgh Penguins, everybody there has been reading your articles, and now they're just kind of doing whatever Sam says.
No, I just thought it was funny.
Well, you should have just played along with it. Then you could have been like Stephen A. Smith.
That's true. Yeah. I probably should have.
Nobody wants
next
to
time.
Like
Next time.
Yeah. All right. Darnell Nurse extended by the Edmonton Oilers.
Yeah, this is needed. The Oilers have had problems with defense recently, and for a while now, actually. So getting a defenseman re-signed is always something they're going to want. I would want to get more defensemen that are better, but Darnell Nurse is good. So re-signing him for, I think it was $3.2 million, is a good signing.
All right, Sam. Let's look at the Central Division, because I know at one point you thought there was really not a lot of shot for wild cards. Do you think that's changed recently?
It has, and I would say the biggest culprit to that has to do with injuries and inconsistency, those two. We mentioned all of these injuries that are being played into all of this, and the Flames could now, losing, their star defenseman and Norris winner, it'll be harder for them, significantly harder, to make it to the playoffs. And with the Jets having a recent surge and Connor Hellebuyck being Connor Hellebuyck, they have a shot now to upset what we thought would be 5 playoff teams.
Yeah, and the same thing goes for the Oilers, who are at that 66-point mark also, with Connor McDavid going down.
Yeah, those two between James Neal and Connor McDavid. Now, I'm going to give the Oilers props, though, because I've been hitting them for the past few weeks when we've done this show. Their response to the adversity that has been around them, especially with being a one-dimensional team, they've really stepped up to the plate, and there's been a lot more depth scoring recently. And the first night after they lost Connor McDavid, they won 5-3. So good on them, but I don't know if they can sustain it.
All right, we hear a lot about cheating nowadays, especially in Major League Baseball. Now you can add the Arizona Coyotes to that, being investigated for cheating by illegal fitness testing junior players.
Yeah, I never enjoy hearing about somebody cheating. It just taints their whole reputation. It's even if they aren't proven of it, there's always somebody wondering if they really just got away with something. So we'll have to see how that investigation plays out. But I never enjoy hearing about or watching somebody cheat.
Well,
Speaking of such, what is
okay.
a sign stealing? I was curious about that with the MLB, and I never understood what that was.
You don't know what sign stealing is? What
No,
what
I don't
what they
follow
were
baseball.
doing was they were basically, you know how they got instant replay in baseball now, so you've got it down there so that the umpires can go look at any reviews. What the Astros were doing was they were putting a camera in center field, stealing the signs, and then as the pitcher gets his sign and he's getting ready to throw a pitch, say it's a curveball, they would beat on a garbage pail or a garbage can, and that would alert the batter that, hey, this is a fastball or this is an off-speed pitch. And the thing that
Oh,
was,
that really would give a major,
oh yeah,
that would
I
make a
mean,
huge difference.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, this is something that Major League Baseball should take much more serious than what it is. You also had players that, in the World Series, Jose Altuve, had a buzzer inside of his shirt that would buzz when it was going to be an off-speed pitch. And the thing that was interesting is, I mean, the Astros, they played the Yankees in the 2017 League Championship Series, and they won every game at home by a run. The 3 games in New York, they got blown out in all 3 games. So
Right.
there's a
Yeah. So, okay.
correlation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
From
And
what
the,
I'm hearing, what they've been doing about it, then they should have been much more severe.
well, they fired the managers, but they should all be banned from baseball. I don't even care if it's Jose Altuve because this is not like it's pee wee football or high school football where you're just going to do what your coach says. I mean, Jose Altuve is worth more to the Houston Astros than AJ Hinch, the manager, was. So if Altuve says, I'm not doing that, they're not going to force him because number one, he could go rat him out and that would be it anyways. So
Right.
tell
Yeah. That.
tell
Yeah.
me, because I want to hear more about this. Tell me more about illegally fitness testing junior players and why it's that big of a deal.
Well, the major problem is when you have underaged players, you're not actually allowed to, in some cases, even talk to them. Like I know, for instance, in our football league, when we were went to that was last summer when we were getting looked at by those coaches.
Yeah.
You weren't even allowed to be talked to if you were under a certain age, and they gave you a shirt for that and all of that. It's a lot like that. You're not actually allowed to do some of those things because the player is under adult age. If they were 18 or something, that would have been fine, but they weren't. It's a big deal, but in some ways, I would think it's a bit bigger than some people are making it. And
You
I
mean
don't know
smaller
all
than
the
people are making it?
details. Pardon me. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know all the details on it, but I am aware that that is one of the biggest issues. Is it's just a lot like you're not allowed to because they're under adult age.
All right. So it's kind of like the NCAA, where if I contact a team about my son as a sophomore, then they can have contact with me, but they can't initiate the contact because he's considered too young.
Right, right. And that's the funny part is if I had been given the right shirt, I wouldn't have been allowed to be talked to that day either, but they gave me the wrong shirt. So,
The way you get to talk to people. I know you like to talk to people, Sam. Next up, the coronavirus and how it may affect the NHL in a big way. And I know I heard NBC broadcaster Pierre McGuire mention this Thursday during the Sabres Red Wings game. You want to talk a little bit about this and how it could affect the NHL?
yeah, the major problem that they've been having is that a lot of the stick parts and materials are made in China, which is currently getting screwed over by the coronavirus, so they're not producing them. So now you have the NHL that's losing I don't remember the exact number, but like 75% of its stick production, and players are still breaking sticks. So they're specifically keep asking players, coaches are like, do everything you can to not break any sticks because we could legitimately run out. And so if that happens, there's going to be a serious problem for the NHL. They might have to find someone else to make their sticks for them because they're running out.
So maybe the grueling truth could come out with hockey sticks now.
I don't know if we have any production for that.
Oh, we can. I mean, Grant's really good with wood, so we can make them. As long as we can make them out of wood, it'll take the NHL back to the 1950s, though.
Yeah.
There you go.
That doesn't bother me too much.
Problem solved. All right, next up, you want to talk a little bit about the tension and the fighting and how it affects the NHL?
Yeah, recently there has been. I've watched quite a few more games recently. And the more I watched, the more I have found that the fighting has increased exponentially. It is insane. I just every single game almost it feels like there's fights or a lot of nasty hits. It's just gotten a lot more tension filled as time has gone on, and this might affect the fact that there have been so many injuries. That might be a result of it. So I mean, we saw this kind of started with Cassian when he beat up on Matthew Tkachuk for being a piece of crap. And so you see this, okay, but Tkachuk was trying to take his head off.
Yeah, I agree, actually. So go ahead.
Yeah. So it started there, and it's almost like the Battle of Alberta spread to the rest of the league. It's quite interesting to watch, actually.
Yeah, it makes the games funner to watch, just admit it.
It does. It does make it a whole heck of a lot less safe, though.
Heck yeah, there's no sports on now because the NBA is doing some stupid all-star thing, and the college basketball is all like a bunch of small schools I don't want to watch, so I'm going to watch hockey tonight again all night because there's nothing else to watch. And if they're going to fight, if there's enough fights, it may bring me back for more. Nah, I watch hockey anyways, but I have to split it between all these other sports because I do every show known to man sports-wise, so...
Yeah, and just found this out. Cassian apparently kicked a player with skates on last night.
Well, I don't know if that's upsetting to me or just impressive that he could kick somebody on skates.
Yeah, he got him and another player got run over, and he was tangled up and got frustrated because the player wouldn't let him up, so he kicked him with his skate.
Well, if the player wouldn't let him up, Sam, you can't really blame him, right?
I'm not sure what my opinion is on that yet, but he might be suspended for 5 to 10 games. I think he's meeting with the NHL safety department today.
Ooh, that sounds scary. You got a meeting with the NHL safety department.
Yeah, that's a bad day.
Bad things can happen, man.
Bad day.
Yeah. All right. NHL top 5 power rankings, Sam.
Yeah, and I know that we've done mine week over week, and I know we know for the most part my opinions on teams, players, but this week I wanted to switch it up a little bit and hear what your top 5 were.
Why do you want to do that, Sam?
I just like to mix it up. It gets too boring if you do the same thing over and over.
Well, I did notice that now the NHL does a Super 16. I think they took a page out of your book. We ought to look into suing them.
Yeah, I definitely think we should do that sometime.
Yeah.
Although there might be a slight problem with that.
What would that be?
I may have not had the idea as an original there.
Oh, come on, Sam. I thought we were going to get rich.
Yeah, we should have gone out and gotten best lawyer in town, just sued the NHL for their idea.
Well, where we live,
that
the
would have
best
been great.
lawyer in town probably wouldn't do as much. But all right, you want to start from number 5 or from number 1?
Let's hear your number 5.
I think I'm going to put the New York Rangers 5 through 1. No, I'm kidding. My number 5. Let me think about this. I'd say the Colorado Avalanche.
Yeah, good forwards. I saw them last night actually playing the Capitals. Very physical game. They blew a 2-0 lead, but I think mostly had to do with the fact that they got tired after a couple of penalty kills.
Number 4, Pittsburgh Penguins.
Yep. Good team overall.
Number 3, the Washington Capitals. No comment?
No, it makes sense. I don't have much to say about them. Most of everything to be said has been said about them.
Number 2, the Boston Bruins.
Now, this is where it gets interesting. There's been a huge debate on whether the Tampa Bay Lightning should be number 1 or whether Boston should be number 1. I don't personally think they should be on number 1 or 2. I'd have them at 3, but I have a feeling where you're going with this is Lightning at number 1.
Yes, and you don't believe in that, do you, Sam?
When I lose trust in a team, it's hard for me. You have to really prove it to gain it back. This started, one of the major examples I use time and time again is with the Nashville Predators. I stopped trusting them immediately after they choked in the finals, and look at where they are now.
Well, how can you choke in the Stanley Cup Finals, Sam? You got to get there.
They did get there, and then they lost their marbles. I mean, look at this. Pecorino was pulled twice on home ice. That's choking.
Well, I think the Lightning are more talented. I would trust the Bruins more in the playoffs, but this is not about who I think is going to win the Stanley Cup Finals because it wouldn't be either one of those two teams. And with the Lightning, 10 straight games, nary a loss. That means none for young people.
I knew it, Matt.
Okay. Now the Bruins are 8-2, but 9-0-1 from where I sit. It's about a game and a half better than 8-2-0.
Yeah, and that is the interesting part, is the race between those two teams is even though the Bruins are consistently doing very good, it's just that the Lightning are doing that much better, and that's why they're only a half game back right now.
All right, so we're going to go to the mailbag. Was it Blue's Clues where you used to go, mail call? See.
I forgot about that show entirely.
Oh, that used to be my son Austin's favorite show, and I used to hear that all the time. Mail call!
But, yeah, I remember the first time I watched that show was while I was at doctor's office, and it was one of those where they actually had the volume turned up.
All right, so we're going questions from Will Maynard. We get 2 questions from him, and then we got listener questions that I just pulled up and haven't even read yet. So we're going to start off with number 1 from Will. Oh, he's taking a shot at somebody I know that's always ripping this guy. Wouldn't you agree that John Tortorella should be considered for Coach of the Year, Sam?
Absolutely 100%. Now, I don't like him as a person, but as a coach, he has done exceptional, and I can't argue what should be a much lower team in the standings, especially with the injuries that they've had. But look at where they are now, competing for higher playoff spots. There's no question that he deserves to at least be in the thought process for Coach of the Year.
So wouldn't you say you were completely wrong in the aspect that he should have been fired before the year even started?
Yeah,
okay.
I would say I was wrong about that.
All right, what are your thoughts on Elvis Merzlikins possibly winning Rookie of the Year?
I don't actually think he will, because the thing is although he's done fantastic, it's only been in the second half of the season versus other rookies who have been doing phenomenal throughout the entire season. I think he definitely deserves a starting spot over Korpisalo, but Rookie of the Year is pushing it just a little.
All right. That was our 2 questions from Will, and now we are going to NHL Fan 27. Who wants to know who should the Edmonton Oilers target for a trade? Would Tyler Toffoli of the LA Kings be a perfect fit?
I think that'd be a good fit, especially considering the injuries of James Neal and Connor McDavid. But you're talking about you want that depth scoring. Forward would be a nice addition. So Tyler Toffoli would be one of the players I'd want to go after. But I'd actually go a step further and say even more important than that depth scoring, because both James Neal and Connor McDavid, I believe, are going to be healthy when it comes playoff time. I think they should actually go after a defenseman first.
All right, next up, we have a question from TJ Johnson1 on Twitter. That's at TJ Johnson1. We are not going to answer that question because you already did. Because the question was, how does the Jason Zucker trade, or what does the Jason Tucker trade mean for the Pittsburgh Penguins and the Minnesota Wild? I think you've already answered about the Zucker trade. How about this? This comes from EasyB2714, who wants to know what you expect from the New Jersey Devils at the trade deadline.
They're going to sell. They know they can't win with this team, and I think they're going to go into rebuild 2.0, which is kind of sad because they were coming into this season thinking this was going to be the game-changing season after they got PK Subban and landed that first-round pick for Jack Hughes. So although it's kind of sad, they don't have enough development to go yet, so they might just sell off just about everything of worth.
Yeah, and I think that would be Wayne Simmons or Simons,
For sure.
Sammy Vatanen,
It's Simmons.
Andy Green. What about Andy Green? He's 37, but if you're making a playoff run, he might be worth it for somebody to take a run at.
Right, but it's the question of what do teams put value on skill versus playoff experience. Like the Sharks, for instance, put more tangibles on, put more on intangibles versus a team like the Avalanche that might put more on skill base.
All right, at Moose Leafs 19, 019 actually. The Florida Panthers seem like they can score goals, but have huge issues keeping them out of their own net. And Sergei Bobrovsky has clearly been improving as a top 4 defenseman on their radar. And what pieces would likely have to be shipped in return? Do you think that the Panthers are playoff bound?
So I would think they were playoff bound if it weren't for the fact that Frederik Andersen just got healthy. I mentioned this when we were talking last week. I said if Frederik Andersen was out for a month or more, I said the Leafs weren't going to do it, but he was only out for a couple, 2-3 weeks, and he's now in, and they've got an improved Jack Campbell back on now second string, where they can pull 2 good goaltenders out. So I don't think they'll make the playoffs, but if they want to, I would say, yes, they need to get a defenseman, and that might cause some issues because the only real things they have to give away are either picks or good forwards, which would likely mean picks, and it would make it harder for them to succeed in the future as a result.
How about this?
So the Panthers are in a tough spot.
I think the best, and don't ever interrupt me again, Sam, but I think that the best guy available here for them would be a guy like Alec Martinez with the Kings, because I think the Kings are in the market for draft picks and prospects, and the Panthers have plenty, including 8 selections in the 2020 draft, 5 in the first 4 rounds. I think Alec Martinez would fit in good with them. He's a lefty, play both sides. I mean, I think he's a versatile option, and he's also signed for next season too.
Yeah, and that's the benefit, because a lot of trades can be like at the end of the season you're done, and then a lot of that value is gone. They need a puck-moving defenseman, so that could be a good option.
All right, and I think that they almost have to make a move like that to be able to catch the Maple Leafs for that 3rd spot in the Atlantic Division.
Yeah, if it wasn't for Frederik Andersen and Jack Campbell, I would say they could just hold on, but because of them, they have to make a move. Their hand has been forced, so they either have to decide that this isn't their year, or they have to go all out.
All right, at Rangers 94, what is the likelihood that the Rangers keep Kreider and sign him before the trade deadline? I think he's a huge presence in the locker room, having one of the best seasons of his career, and any of the things they get from him in trade will probably never replace his game.
That is very true, and this is one of the things where I know he's one of the top tradable assets, but as we've discussed, the Rangers are on the right track to make this better as their rebuild is going along, and in a year or two they could be competitive. If I were the Rangers, I would hold on to Chris Kreider, but I don't actually think they will, but I'm really hoping that they do.
I think they will. I don't think they can afford to get. He's 28 years old. And like
I know
this
he's
guy
good
said,
too.
His impact carries through so many areas of the Rangers. I mean, he's a top 6 forward, I think, a goal scorer, fast as crap on the ice. He's a net front presence. He's a leader. I think he's a role model for the young forwards on that team, which they have a plethora of. So when I look at that, I don't think they're going to trade him. And
well, yeah, and the other thing to consider is that will be the determining factor on whether they're kind of sabotaging their own rebuild or not.
yeah, and my guess is with this, it's going to be more about the terms on his next contract, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Because I think this is a guy that if he becomes an unrestricted free agent July the 1st, I think this is a guy that's probably going to look for a 7-year contract. And I think the Rangers probably would rather sign him to a 5-year at most 6. And I doubt Kreider will be with the Rangers after the deadline if he hasn't yet signed or agreed to a contract. So I think if I'm them, I kind of give him what I want because you can't afford to lose him and still sell your fans on the fact that you're a team of the near future.
Yeah, again, it would be a total sabotage to what they're trying to do. The pieces are starting to come together, especially with good young goaltenders. The last thing you want to do is to talent drain right as you're coming out of a rebuild.
All right, here's another question, but it's stupid. Let's see if we got another one.
Wow.
Well, it was. I didn't say who it was. It was just a stupid question.
Okay, I was about to say, I hope you're not about to say who that was, because we don't want to piss everybody off.
All right, I will. What the heck? No, I'm kidding.
Oh, crap.
All right, Sam. I think we're out of topics. We're out of questions. Go ahead. Closing words, final thoughts?
Fun fact of the day, we have a special trade deadline show coming up in just a week or two with the Fourth Line Hockey Podcast. They agreed to do a podcast with us. We still have to set the date, but if you want some additional voices on a trade deadline show, you'll have that one coming up.
All right, Sam. Anything else? Want to tell people where they can follow you on Twitter?
Yeah, at Samuel McD22. Always looking forward to podcasts like this. If you want updates on when they're going to be or have any suggestions for a future show, I would be totally happy to hear it. And one other thing, for anybody, I mentioned this would be at the end, for anybody that wants to, I like how we do the listeners mailbag. It always is nice to hear from you guys and hear what your thoughts are on things and have questions for us. But if you have a topic you'd like us to discuss on next week's show, either message me or Mike, and we might just be able to cover it.
Yeah, so either tweet to Sam or tweet to me at Grueling Truth. You can direct message it however you want or just tweet it straight up to us. I want to remind you, you can find everything that I do at Grueling Truth on Twitter. And you can follow us at gruelingtruth.com. Whatever sport you want to hear about, we got you covered, except there's not a whole lot of soccer, but that's not really a sport. All right, guys, we're going to wrap it up. We'll be back next week on the NHL Weekly Show for Sam McGinnis. I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.